This week on the show, I'm really happy to be able to introduce Stephen DuPont. Now, Stephen's coming to us from Australia and is an award-winning photographer who not only was awarded the Eugene Smith Grant in humanitarian photography, was also a recipient of the citation for the Robert Capa Gold Medal, which is, I think, a first for the show. Now, Stephen, you started off in photojournalism in Australia, but you've since subsequently travelled all over the world with your work. I kind of want to bring the listeners up to speed. So can you just give us a kind of potted history of your journey into photography?
How long have you got, Greg? Okay, so very, very quick sort of window into my world of photography started when I was about a 16-year-old, where I got my first camera, which was a Pentax K1000, and started sort of mucking around with it as a young teenager, and but it wasn't really until I left traveling when I was 18, I took this around the world sort of ticket with my backpack, and that was where I really discovered that the camera had a lot more meaning to me than just taking pictures of my girlfriend or my pets or my model soldiers and blown up model tanks and aeroplanes and other crap that I was shooting as a younger person. I discovered
I'm glad that wasn't just me then.
Yeah. No. So, the camera really allowed me to explore the world beyond being just a tourist. I mean, I was so taken with what I was seeing in places like India and Brazil. So as an 18-year-old that's, going to these places for the first time, it was incredibly eye-opening and just wild. And so the camera was my window and my reason to explore these places differently, and to try and make photographs that were a little bit more meaningful than snapshots, than tourist snapshots. So I started to kind of look at, some of the more grittier kinds of pictures that I was seeing in Nepal and India. And that was my first experience of really kind of understanding the power of the camera and how it could capture humanity. And, I wasn't a photographer then. I wasn't a photographer until I came home and kind of went to my mum after this trip and said, "Hey, mum, I'm going to be a photographer." So, then I kind of decided straight after this trip, but I needed a place to start, and I was lucky to meet someone who was a top magazine photographer in Sydney, and he introduced me to the editorial world and sort of said, "Well, look, if you want to be a photographer, you've got to go out there and just take pictures." And he said, "What are you interested in?" I said, "Well, I love music. I love bands." And he said, "Well, that's great. Go and photograph bands. It's a great start. In fact, that's where I started. And you'll learn everything about the camera. You'll learn about lighting. You'll understand how difficult it is to photograph bands because of all the tricky lighting conditions. And it'll actually teach you so much more than anything else or anyone else can teach you." So he sent me on my way, and I started sneaking my camera in to photograph rock and roll bands, and then that quickly developed into assisting, fashion and advertising photographers. And then I guess when I was around 20, 21, I discovered the photographs of Don McCullen, and it was his pictures that ignited this, this feeling in me that I didn't want to go and just photograph bands and celebrities. I actually wanted to go and photograph something really deep and meaningful. And so with that conscious decision, I basically kept, working as a kind of a, commercial photographer, or I was actually working as a press photographer, but shooting daily news and celebrities and things. but knowing very well that my heart and my dream was going to be in serious documentary photography, and it was going to be going in the footsteps of like McCullen and a lot of the Magnum photographers that inspired me as well. At the time, I was looking at Salgado and Kudelka and Robert Frank and lots of photographers that opened up this whole new kind of vision. It,
Mm,
they were poetry. They were like,
mm,
when I saw their photographs, I'm like, this is photography in a whole other level. And that's all I wanted, and I just thought, I'm just going to do everything I can to make that happen. And it was a journey, and I'm still taking that journey today, even 30, God, is it 30 years? It's more. It's 35 years or so more down that road. I'm still taking that journey, and I'm still being
mm.
inspired, and I'm still learning, and I'm still making mistakes, and I'm still excited. I'm still really excited about going out there and making pictures.
Well, that's an amazing thing, because I think not the hardest, but one of the tough things about photography is, as a lot of our listeners who work in that field, is maintaining that enthusiasm, because it's not a constant. You go through dips and troughs with it, don't you, where you have these moments when you're really pumped and excited, and then you might kind of shoot a project or a story and it doesn't quite turn out the way you wanted, or it falls flat and you kind of feel, why am I bothering? So it's kind of maintaining that enthusiasm is such an important part of the career if you're going to have that longevity. And I mean, I'd love to know exactly how many photographers Don McCullen's been a gateway drug for, because myself included,
Yeah,
because that man, he quite often is on the record for saying, he sometimes wonders what the point of him taking pictures was, and you start
I
to
agree.
hear the amount of people that were affected. It not just people that went into photography, but people that decided to become doctors, people that decided to work as humanitarians,
Yeah,
because of the power of his pictures.
yeah,
And as much as he might want to be a bit occasionally Eeyore about it, and a bit depressed about what difference it's really had, and I can understand why, given everything that he's seen and everything he's been through. You sometimes want to just be able to take him to one side and say, listen, you've really affected a lot of people with your images, and that's the power of photography. But I
absolutely.
want to just go back a little bit into the beginning of how you got into it, in terms of your, where you were brought up, the situation you were brought up in as a kid. Have you ever delved down into the real kind of what it is, what your why it is that you feel compelled to shoot, aside from the obvious of understanding, telling a message? Do you know where that comes from?
Well, I think my early childhood upbringing certainly opened my eyes to a kind of trauma, in a way, of kind of human trauma, of kids that were my age, older, younger, but also my age, that were orphaned or delinquents, or people who had no parents, or were um, sent away for different reasons, taken away for different reasons. People that were struggling at the bottom of a barrel, really, kids, children, and I believe that had a pretty big impact on my psyche and on my philosophy, I guess, when I got to the point of traveling and seeing the world and seeing other traumatic situations and marginalized people. I wonder whether it gave me that that childhood experience, allowed me a bit of empathy and
Mm,
understanding of what I was facing, in a way that I certainly would never put myself in their position in terms of their struggle, because I wasn't struggling. However, I saw the struggle, and my parents
mm,
were deeply affected by looking after these kids as well as looking after me. And of course, it was a completely different way to grow up. I mean, it's not a normal way to grow up for a for a for a, a normal for a kid. It's like
mm,
I mean, not everyone grows up in that situation because my parents were working as full-time carers and they lived in the homes with the kids. So there were like 30, 40 kids. It was like, we
Wow.
we could field a football team every day, which we did. It was like after school we'd be having football games and it was great. There was so much great things about having all of those people around you, but it certainly wasn't normal. And
Mm,
I do believe that it must have had a kind of psychological impact on me, and I do think about it a lot now as I get older as well, and think back about that childhood, and it wasn't all good either. I mean, there were traumatic things that happened to me during that time that you never forget, but I've always looked at the world in a way that I feel that I hope that I, uh, I have I try and have an understanding of what I'm seeing. I try and
mm,
bring a kind of truth to what I'm capturing. I'm I'm hoping that my photographs and that my stories will have some sort of impact on an audience if be what it is. I mean, there are all these ideals that you have as a photographer, as a photojournalist, going into war zones and covering big stories that you hope that will make a difference. And just sort of going back to Don and kind of quoting Don, because I was just with Don McCullen 3 weeks ago in Somerset, and he continues to say that he feels like his pictures never made a difference. He's
yeah.
sort of he's quite negative about the power of his photos, and I think I don't quite believe everything Don says. I think Don's had a huge impact on so many ways. I think he's very humble, and
Yeah.
I think he's a deep thinking kind of guy, which you brought it up. Don's more likely to say, well, doctors, they make changes. They change people's lives, and nurses and aid workers, but I don't really change people's lives. Um, and there's a sense of truth to that, but I don't think you can deny his photography and the power of his photography, nor can I deny my own photography and
No.
what kind of impacts that may have had. And a lot of it you never hear about. A lot of it you never see.
Mm,
Um, there's direct blowback with certain things. Obviously, if you've got a world breaking story and it has some influence on things, like when I covered the American forces in Afghanistan in 2005, and I photographed American troops burning the bodies of two dead Taliban. I mean, that photograph, or that series of photographs and the video I took, went viral and went all over the world and had a direct impact on American forces in Afghanistan and around the world, and actually did make a change.
yeah.
Um, and got a lot of um, impact out of it. And that's a direct, feeling of like, wow, yes, photography can make a change. Of course it
And
feels
even if it doesn't at the
satisfying.
time, yeah, if it doesn't, even if it doesn't at the time, I think the importance of it being there for the historical record is something that sometimes gets overlooked. We tend to think in news cycles, we tend to think in like, oh, it's got to have an impact now. But sometimes those pictures just need to be recorded for prosperity.
Thank you for saying that, because when I think about my photography, what I've taken over the last 30, 40 years, I look at it as more history. And
Mm,
I think deep down, I'm much more of a historical photographer than I am a news photographer. I don't think I was a news photographer, but I was never, it was never my passion. I think my passion was much deeper. My passion was more for doing long form documentary work, and work that would test time and that would, you know, be a piece of history. So history's a
Yeah.
big thing. History's a really big thing.
I
Memory.
think I'm with you on that. Like, I feel like those drivers are very much behind what got me interested in photography as well, and
Mm.
so I can totally relate to that. Um, I also can see that in your scrapbooks, which I
Oh,
personally
yeah.
love. If you delve down on Steam's website, we'll link to them in the show notes. But you've got some amazing scrapbooks on there, especially kind of from your work in the, you've got your fucked up photos section as well, which is
Yeah,
all
yeah.
double exposures, and I don't know what you were shooting on. Like, were you shooting on medium format and Holgers and
Wow.
wide luxes and God knows what? What were you shooting
Everything.
on for those?
Lot,
Everything.
yeah, Leicas, Hasselblads, Mamiyas, all sorts of cameras. I mean, mostly film, obviously. Um,
But I think that sense of that's the thing I love about scrapbooks and seeing photographers' scrapbooks. Even somebody like Frank Ockenfels, for example, has these amazing scrapbooks he does from his celebrity photo shoots. But there's a real kind of personal, a deeply personal side to a scrapbook of a photographer that speaks far louder than anything else, because it's totally controlled by the photographer, and it's almost like reading a photographer's diary.
yeah.
And one thing I've loved about looking at your scrapbooks is your, shooting with these Polaroids and the collages and the way that you kind of record this stuff. You can get that sense that the historical record and recording the historical record, even if it's just primarily at first for yourself,
Hmm.
but eventually for everyone else, is a worthy thing to be doing, because it's
Thank you
your
very
take on the
much.
world,
I'm glad
you
you
know?
like.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with the nowadays, though, I mean, doing that kind of stuff is not harder, but I guess, when you started out, I believe you went off to Cambodia to cover stuff in kind of 80, was that around 89? Was that when you
My
started,
first
or was
my
it?
first story. Yeah.
Yeah.
89,
Yeah.
the Vietnamese withdrawal from Cambodia. I
So
was
you
on
had a good,
assignment for Playboy magazine.
ah, I did an assignment for them last year, actually, in London.
I thought it was
And
very rock and roll. It was great.
yeah, the funny thing is, no one realizes that they do documentary work.
Yeah,
So whenever I tell people, like, oh, I've just done an assignment for Playboy,
yeah,
they're like, what? What were you shooting? I was like,
yeah.
football fans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you think
But
of some great writers, Hunter S. Thompson and people like that wrote for Playboy. It's
yeah.
got a good reputation for good journalism.
So you had a good,
Yeah,
15, 16 years before digital came on, I guess is what
yeah.
I'm trying to say with that first assignment, where shooting that kind of work on film lends itself to having the scraps, the prints that didn't work, the kind of
Mhm.
the end of the roll shots,
Yep.
the Polaroids, all of that physical material. How do you find it now? Well, obviously, with everything having moved across to digital?
Mm,
Because personally, I find it a lot more. It's just a very different way of working. It feels much more sanitized in some ways because
mm.
there isn't those happy accidents that we used to get so often with film.
Yeah, well, look, absolutely. I mean, I I do shoot digital a lot now because of costs, and,
Mm.
it's just easier. Uh,
If you're on assignment and you're filing,
yeah,
you sometimes have to,
and
right?
I'm shooting on a Leica M11 monochrome, and it is absolutely phenomenal quality. Um, it's the closest digital I've found to black and white film. Saying that, I have never stopped shooting film, and a lot of my personal projects have always been film based, and I continue to shoot film and continue to love film. And I love it for the reasons that you love my scrapbooks, because I love the ephemera of film and I love the authenticity of film. It
Mm.
somehow brings a kind of truth um, yeah, personal. Yeah, like you said, it's kind of it allows you to be personal. It allows you to produce something that is much more, from your heart and soul.
Mm.
Film is just such a wonderful medium to explore that world for me. And and really kind of, you can't, it has a longevity that I love. Digital doesn't have that longevity. Digital can disappear.
No.
Your hard drive
Well,
can
it
break
also,
down, whatever. You lose everything. It gets corrupted. At least with film, we know it tests time and we
yeah,
know it's tactile. And I just love the look of it. I love the quality of
yeah,
it. I love being able to look at a contact sheet and actually edit and
yeah,
make my Chinograph marks and have that as a piece of my own editing history as well. You
yeah.
can't do that on the computer screen. And so
No,
all of these things about film and going into the darkroom and making handmade prints and then going and making handmade artist books and using gaffer tape or, sticking it in and using I use a lot of print stuff as well, multimedia print making and stamps, and I write diaries and, use a lot of ink and mixed media and create these books that are my world. That's actually
yeah,
more about me saying what I've been out to photograph and seen than I can in just a single photograph. So I think it
yeah,
adds to the story in a much deeper level because you're getting my journey as well. You're getting the moment, but you're also getting the photographer and the photographer's journey to create that moment. And I think
yeah,
it's really interesting. And a lot of photographs that you see on TikTok or Instagram, I mean, you flick through them, you know nothing about them. You know nothing
yeah,
about the photographer who took them. You don't even know if it's real. So,
yeah,
for me, that's just not about photography. That's just it's just shit, you know?
yeah.
So
I do wonder with the way that AI is kind of developing and obviously with film, there's been this resurgence towards film because it's deemed as, especially in the fashion world, it's kind of people want that certain look, they want that color handprint look, blah
mm,
blah blah. But
mm,
I do wonder if there will be this kind of yearning after something that feels more like you said, there's a truth to it that maybe I'm saying this a bit naively. It feels like though that's restrained, it's on celluloid, it's that frame, and it exists, it's real, it's out in the world, it's tangible.
yeah,
Whereas
it's
digital
true.
just is binary, it's numbers, it's
Yeah,
noughts and dashes, like or noughts and
yeah,
ones. It's
and if you
and
honor
there's
sorry to if you honor that frame and you don't fuck with it, then it is truth. It's as truthful as you're gonna get in photography, because the problem with digital is you can manipulate it to high heavens.
yeah,
You can change it, you can do whatever you want, and I think if you're honoring the negative,
hmm
then that's as close as you'll get to the truth. It's not 100%, there's no photography is 100% truthful, but it's as close
mm.
as you're gonna get. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, but
No. That's. I mean, it brings to mind, people like Philip Blenkinsop as well, who
yeah,
use
well,
a lot of
Phil's
media and stuff.
amazing. I was just with Phil 2 weeks ago down in
Oh
D,
no
and
way.
I photographed him and hung out. We're old friends, so we've known each other since we both started, and,
Yeah.
it's amazing for me to reconnect with Phil again and to see his studio. Man, I'm so jealous. I mean, his studio is amazing. I mean, this guy's nuts. He's
Yes. Is he moved?
nuts.
He's based in France now these
Yeah,
days.
he's in D in the south of France. Yeah. Yeah, I heard the podcast you did. Oh, no, no,
Lovely.
sorry, my bad. It was Ben Smith.
There's another.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah,
small voice. We'll link
with
to that. It's a
small
really
voice.
people should listen to it because it's a
Yeah,
really good.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an excellent podcast for a start, and it's also a really good intro that particular episode to Philip's work if people aren't aware of it. But
Mm. If
I'd
I
like to
just
kind of
say something
segue this as well.
mm, sorry, I was just
Sorry.
gonna say just one more thing about Phil because I was just with him and that, not many people know this, but Phil was a major influence on me when I was just starting out. And in fact, I never would have taken my Polaroid portraits or, medium format portraiture in a way that I took that and started to use Polaroid Posneg without Phil's influence. I mean, Phil was a huge influence on me. Um, because he was doing that, before I did, and we were actually together on the border on that first story in Vietnam, and I remember seeing Phil's work early on, thinking, "Wow, he's doing something here that not many people are doing," and it was this incredibly powerful, poetic kind of window into that world, into that kind of world of documentary photography that wasn't just straight kind of journalistic work. It added something so much more personal, and so he was a big influence for me. Yeah.
Mm.
There you go,
Do you
Phil.
think as well, like another another big influence has been Tim Page.
Oh God,
Now
yeah,
Tim
yeah, yeah.
sadly
Bless you,
passed recently, didn't
bless you.
he?
Yeah, he did,
But
sadly.
you've been working on this book of his. Tell us a bit more
Yeah.
about that.
Oh, I'd love to. So, Tim passed away a few years ago, and prior to that, even before, we knew he was sick, Tim and I made a decision that, well, in fact, I went to Tim and I said, "Tim, we got to do something with your Vietnam black and white work, because I think there's something in there, and no one's seen it. They've only seen your color stuff." And I thought, and I kind of felt strongly as a bit of an ambassador for Tim, because I felt that he was unjustly, or had been unjustly critiqued and kind of, put aside as not a great photographer for many, many years. People kind of
Mm.
dissed him and, saw him as this sort of gonzo, kind of doped out, whatever dude. Um, and yet I knew that in his archive there was a very special eye there, and I found that, and Tim allowed me to go into
Mm.
his archives and look at all the Vietnam War work, just the black and white stuff, and it was mind blowing. Not only, I was taking this incredible journey through Tim's eyes, and seeing what he was seeing and feeling what he was feeling through his contact sheets. I discovered this world of Tim's that I hadn't seen before and no one else had. And so I said, we got to do something with this, because you need, this needs to be a kind of a legacy for you. And I
Mm.
said, I want to do the great epic book of your work. And I stupidly kind of said all this stuff. And of course he said, "Yeah, please, can you do it?" And then I lost a year of my life editing, like living up there with Tim, literally interviewing him and going through his archive. But it was one of the greatest years, because he died soon after. And had I not spent that time with him, so I spent more time
Yeah.
with him in that year than I had in our whole life. So,
Yeah.
one, I got this incredible project of Tim's, which is now his kind of legacy of his work in Vietnam, and have opened up
Mm.
body of work that is so powerful. And you'll see when the book comes out, and I'm sure it's going to have an incredible impact. And a lot of people are going to go, "My God, this is Tim Page? We had no idea."
Yeah.
And I
I
hope
can't. I
I hope that
I can't
happens.
wait to see
Yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
really special. And look, I'm biased because, of course, I was very close to Tim, but as an editor and a designer of this book, I'm completely unbiased, because I'm seeing it purely on the
Yeah.
merit of what it is. And you have Tim's diaries, which are just phenomenal. You've got all his ephemera,
Mm.
all his objects, his gear, his notebooks,
Yeah.
his,
Yeah.
amazing life, of course, and then the photographs just jump off the page, man. I can't wait. Steidl is still sitting on it, and they were meant to print it 3 years ago. So it's sitting at Steidl. Hopefully it'll be coming out soon. It's all ready to
So
print.
So for listeners who might not be aware of Tim, I will link to some information on him in the show notes. But he famously kind of went from basically backpacking to kind of running film over the border in Cambodia to directly being involved as a photographer in the Vietnam War at a very young age. He kind of left the UK and, as as I said, was backpacking around and then kind of stumbled into this job. Ended up hanging out. Was it Frankie's house? Was that what they used to call the place in Saigon where they hung out?
He set up Frankie's house with Sean Flynn, who is the son of the great actor Errol Flynn. Yeah.
Who then went missing with Dana Stone, right? And there's a fantastic book called Two of the Missing by Perry Dean Young about that.
That's great.
Which is out of print, but is worth picking up. Yeah, the Tim's book, Page After Page, also out of print, but worth. It's his autobiography. Yeah. That's worth a read.
Yeah, that was the first book I read when I went overseas. I took that to Cambodia, to Vietnam. I took 2 books. I took Unreasonable Behavior by McCullen.
Okay, Don
and then I
McCullen's,
took Page After Page. They were the very first books I ever read about 2 photographers. Incredible history lesson, and you know.
Well, if I can find a copy on Abe, I will link it in the show notes for that book. But it's worth trying to pick out, get a copy. I've got a copy at home. I did my dissertation on Vietnam War photography, bizarrely, because I did a war studies degree and a history degree, and so I spoke to Tim very briefly, partly for that and partly for a documentary I was working on about Cathy Leroy, who's a French photographer who's in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And the documentary never got made, but there is a fantastic documentary about her that people could find on the Dark Room Rumor.
My friend Mark Minash made that documentary, Greg. He's one of my best friends. I'm
partway through watching it. Yeah, I'm
amazing. In fact, Jacques and I are working together right now. We've been traveling around the world. That's why we were with McCullen a few weeks ago. But Jacques and I collaborate. Actually, we've collaborated on a lot of things, and artist books as well. So it's great that you bring up Cathy, because that's a great little film, and what an amazing photographer she was.
Yeah, I mean, for the documentary, I went to Paris and interviewed her mum. I interviewed Stanley Green, who sadly is no longer with us. Interviewed Calstead, Abbas, a whole load of people, and it was really sad that it never got that particular documentary never got made. But as part of it, I'd just come back from working in the Middle East. I'd been covering the Israel-Hezbollah war, and I came back and I was due to speak to Tim for this documentary. Yeah. And I remember specifically, it's the only time I've ever spoken to him directly, but he called me, and I was in my flat in London at the time, this little kind of studenty box flat. And I remember getting this phone call from Tim in his kind of, he'd started to get a bit of an Australian accent to an English ear, but he still maintained that kind of, he had that kind of drawly way of talking. And he'd seen my work he'd actually checked it out, the work I've been doing in the Middle East. And I remember just being so excited to be talking to this kind of hero of mine who was saying, yeah, you got some good stuff there. You got a good eye, and it was like, wow. I remember putting the phone down and literally one of those moments as a young photographer, early on in their career when you've spoken to a hero of yours. It was,
you would have been stoned, right?
Yeah.
He was never not stoned. He was always at his best when he was high. God bless him.
I don't know if that says a good thing or a bad thing about the work, but
no, definitely in Tim's situation, that's a good thing.
Okay, but I can't wait for that book to come out. I mean, I remember seeing you posting about it, and I've been excited ever since I saw you starting to tease stuff out on your social media channels about that book. So we will keep listeners in the loop on that as well.
Great, thank you.
Because it's going to be an absolute blinder. So to go back a bit to your career though, like when you were, I'm going to take you back to kind of 2006, 2008 kind of period when you're working in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. There was, you obviously had some close calls in your work. I've read that you were involved in or close to a suicide bombing in Kabul, 2008. How do you feel that those kind of experiences, did you ever have any wobbles with your photography in terms of like, what am I doing? Is it worth it? What's the kind of level of risk you were willing to kind of put up with? Because, most ordinary people would be involved in one of those situations and say, sod that.
Yeah, all the time. There's never a moment where I haven't felt a kind of fear. in where I was sort of heading into, in these places, in any of these war zones.
Mm,
But it's been that sort of sense of fear that I believe has allowed me to tread with caution and to be a little bit more awake about where I'm going and what I'm getting myself into. Just being much more in tune with the environment in a way that allows me to take less risks, but still get the job done and still go into places. And that comes with experience, because the first time I ever went into a war was in Sri Lanka in 1990, and I nearly got killed, and I didn't make a single picture. And it was
mm,
devastating. One, it was devastating because I was in a really bad situation where I should have been dead. I was shot at by the
mhm,
Tigers, repeatedly. I was on a motorbike heading toward their checkpoint. It's a long story, I won't go into it. And then secondly, I was in a situation where there was a battle and I couldn't take a photograph, and I left feeling really like a failure, like, "Oh, shit, I
mm.
fucking first war and I failed." Um, but it teaches you a lot. And
Yeah,
teaches you a lot about, risks taking and what you're getting yourself into in these places. Of course, in a situation where it's an IED or a landmine or a sniper or a suicide bomber, in my case in 2008, you can't prepare for that because you can't see it. It's
no.
it's 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 like a ghost. You have no idea
Mhm.
where and when it's coming. So you have no concept of just any understanding. It's just unlucky. And so where can take, where I've sort of felt that I can monitor situations and take, valid risks or not. Situation like the suicide bombing was completely left field. It was unexpected. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, look, some people would have been through that and went, "Oh, fuck this. I'm never going to do that again." My original kind of response was a little bit like that in the moment, but I was in shock and I was
yeah.
adrenalized. And my beautiful daughter Ava had been born just, a year before that. And so I was
Wow.
questioning right there and then, what the fuck was I doing and is it worth it? Of course.
Mm,
But then, 3, 4 months later, I went back to Afghanistan to do an embed with the British Gurkhas. And the reason I did was purely because if I didn't get back up on the horse, so to speak, if I didn't get
yeah,
back up on that horse, I don't know if I would have went back. And Afghanistan had become such a huge part of my life and commitment that I felt I need to honor the people of Afghanistan as well to finish the project I was doing. I was working on the Gene Smith grant and many other things that needed to finish my book of Afghanistan. And so I had to go back but I went back with, yeah, with sort of great caution. It's like
mm,
no one, I certainly don't ever want to go through that again. I mean, there's a sort of a strange feeling when you do go through it and you survive it like I did. It's
yeah,
kind of a feeling of empowerment. And
mm,
I wouldn't say excitement, but certainly an empowerment of you survived, and um, just that you survived. I mean, really, it was. I
yeah,
should have been killed. I mean, like in many other situations, and you just think, God, someone's looking after you. I mean, I'm not a religious person, but fuck, man, I believe in God when I need to. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
when you're pinned down under fire or, that's when I start praying to God, and I genuinely fucking believe. And, that's just my only religious moments, but, it's a strange world. It's a strange thing to do. Uh, One of the questions that I ask people, because I'm interviewing actually a lot of conflict photographers at the moment with a current project I'm doing. And one of the questions I'm asking them is, is a photograph worth dying for? You know,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to answer what they say, but from what I say, no, a photograph's not worth dying for.
Mm.
I I don't think there's any photograph worth dying for. I think there's photographs worth risking your life for, but I think
Mm.
you need to weigh up those risks. I think
Yeah.
that, and caution to a lot of young photographers who want to go out there and prove themselves, who don't have experience, and um, you know, some have wound up dead. It's not worth it. You need to tread with caution, and you need to take advice, and you need to be open to, not being a hero, and not being an arrogant kind of person.
Mm.
You need to really tread with caution if you're someone starting out. And
I,
I
I,
I can
I mean,
I can say that from experience, and I did not tread with caution, and I got lucky, you know.
yeah. I mean, I also think that today's battlefields are very different. You go back
Mm,
20, 30 years and you would have had to have been very unlucky to be hit by a kind of shell, or, there might have been
sure.
quite strong chance of landmines and things like that. But then
Mm.
suddenly you're getting into global war on terror and you're getting IEDs and suicide bombers and things like that.
Drones.
And now it's FPV drones. You don't even need to be anywhere near the front line.
No.
Um,
In fact, you
and
can
any
almost.
movement on the ground could be spotted.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to cover a front line now. Look at Ukraine. You can literally,
Mm,
you can't, you can cover it, but you're covering a drone war, and you're
yeah.
you're you're in a trench. You're not doing anything. I mean, it's a different, yeah, it's different kind of wars to cover now. Same in the Middle East right now. I mean, it's a bombing war. What are you going to do? You're just going to photograph bombs blowing up buildings and then go in and do the aftermath. You're not
Yeah.
in a trench with soldiers shooting at each other, or mortars coming across, or it's not a guerrilla war. It's a high intensity drone war, and
It's sad
heavy
though,
weapons.
because you realize that the lack of pictures coming out of
Yeah,
the Gaza situation, for example, in the last few years, because
yeah,
it's such a dangerous place to work as
yeah.
a journalist. The
Well,
chances of you being killed are incredibly high.
they're targeted now. That's the other problem, Greg. Journalists are legitimately
Yeah.
being targeted.
Oh.
And this is a new thing. Um, I mean, look,
Mm.
journalists and photographers have always been killed in battle, as we know, and there have been situations where they have been targeted, but nothing like now, nothing like Gaza,
No.
nothing like
Yeah.
Gaza. So we're seeing a new kind of era. In fact,
Hmm.
I've been sort of looking at a new book project, which is what I'm working on conflict photographers, and it's sort of, the working title is um, uh, "End Times."
Hmm.
It's the question: are we at the end of these times of being a war photographer, and is it's kind of on death row. War photography
Well, I
is,
wonder how it will evolve.
well,
I
this is what
wonder whether or
we're
not actually
seeing it we're
it's
seeing
going
it
to be
evolve.
drones and stuff, right?
Well, we're seeing it evolve, but we're seeing it evolve in a way that it's no longer intimate, personal photography. It's distance, it's drones, it's
But
long
but then
lens.
but that's a
It's
yeah, that's understandable in a way that it's evolving alongside the way that the battlefield's evolving, because the battlefield's
true.
also becoming like that, isn't it? The battlefield's
Well,
also becoming
yeah,
like decoupled from kind of intimate
yeah,
situations. It's all remote killing, which
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah. So for me, going in with a Leica and a 35 mil lens, which is all I pretty much use in these situations, I'd be hopeless. I wouldn't. I'd have to wait for everything to stop, and
yeah.
then I could walk in. But yeah, it's a very different kind of beast, and but but really, the heart
Mm,
of what I'm saying with all of this is that these photographers that are being targeted and assassinated, this is a very um, twisted and horrible new kind of scenario that we have to deal with right now, which
mm,
follows a lot of new kinds of information that we're getting, misinformation from governments and organizations and dictators in a way that they're trying to um, create the narrative of what they want the world to believe, which is not the truth. And so with everything that's going on, it makes it really difficult. But it's more important than ever that photographers are still going out and covering these wars. More important than ever.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, that's
Sorry,
a
a bit
good place.
heavy. Bit heavy.
No. That's
For like
this is
your morning.
important.
Have you got a coffee there?
I
I'm
think
ready
these
for
are
a drink. I need a whiskey.
These are the conversations we need to be having, though, and this is what partly what the podcast isn't focused on photojournalism. It's focused on photography as a wider medium and the visual industry. But this is all part of it, and I think for our listeners, some of which will have experience of what you're talking about, and others it will just not be at all in their wheelhouse, and that's absolutely fine. For them, it's fascinating to get an insight into this world, and these debates are important for us to have because we are entering very strange times where the sense of truth and what is truth is rapidly changing. And I think myself and you are very much on the same page about our original kind of draw to photography. It was this belief that the truth that's held in an image is really important. And obviously to take a photo, to frame something is to exclude something. The idea of objective truth is sort of nonsense because you're always going to have an opinion of where you're facing and where you're pointing your lens. Yeah. But there's still a purity to it that it feels like it's hanging on by a thread right now with everything that's going on with AI and how easy it's become to manipulate and to change and to adapt images. And I think once we enter a post-truth world, that's a really, really scary place.
Very much so.
And I do wonder then on that sense, like photography as a medium itself, what's your kind of vision of it in the future? Do you see it still being an important thing that people are going to hold on to? Do you think it's going to go the way of painting, and become a kind of niche pastime or a craft? Certainly the way of working, is going to change. It's fascinating for people who are kind of still trying to work in this industry, but seeing it kind of slipping away beneath their feet.
Well, yeah. Well, look, it's a good question, and it's one that I'm not sure I can really answer because I don't think we know where it's going to go. I don't think anyone knows. It's happening so fast, technology, particularly with AI. And what I do know is that I'm sure there'll always be some sort of photography. Just there could be different ways to take photographs. Maybe the future is we photograph just through a lens in our eyeball, for example. We not at glasses, but actually have it in our eye where we actually go out and we kind of start clicking, literally clicking photographs with our eyes. I'm sure that's something that's down the track. So technology is going to be a big conductor in the world of photography. However, what I see now and what I see in the future is, and it's disturbing because there's just so much rubbish out there. There's so much, and digital is the big. I'm sorry, but digital's the big culprit here. The invention of digital.
There's a lot of visual noise.
It's visual noise. It's cyber stuff. It's pixels. It's whatever you want to call it. It's not. It's not something you can pick up. It's not something you can smell or feel, or and that's why I'm a true believer of film photography in that regard.
Do you think photography, the construct of taking a picture in a frame, is probably the thing that's going to disappear within our lifetimes? I mean, my kids growing up, it's going to seem like quite an archaic thing for an
Yeah,
image to actually even be in a frame, because I
absolutely,
imagine the
absolutely.
future for them is 3D
Yeah,
interactive images,
yeah.
worlds which
Well,
literally they can move anywhere and see anywhere.
well, that's right. I mean, the image that will be a hologram in
Mm,
front of you. Photography is gonna explode with technology, and it's
mm.
gonna take us to I just don't know where, but, um but I think we're gonna see it in our lifetime, which is
Yeah.
really exciting in one way, and really, for me as a purist and someone who loves film, in a way is kinda sad to I'd be very sad to see, um, film photography not taken, seriously, and not appreciated.
I think it will continue to be taken. I think it will continue to be appreciated by a slightly more niche audience.
Yeah, yeah,
I personally think it will not disappear. It's just that our concept of photography will massively change.
yeah,
And the idea, what we do right now, especially shooting on film, will become a slightly kind of archaic way of working, but it will still have its proponents and people that look at it and go, wow, that's a fascinating medium to tell a story.
yeah,
Because ultimately, we're storytellers, and
yeah. It's a good point.
we have chosen to tell stories in the way that we do. Some people write, some people make movies, we take pictures.
Yeah,
And to bring it right back to the beginning of the conversation where you were talking about kind of the power and the impact that photography arguably has or doesn't have, you know, yes, a doctor will have a much bigger impact right there and then. But photography has a different impact. It doesn't necessarily mean it's better or worse. Um, you have to play to your own strengths, don't you? And if that's what
mm,
you're good at, if you're good at taking pictures and creating order out of chaos within a frame, then do that, because
mm,
that's going to be your best chance of actually making a difference in the world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Good
So I
point.
think it will just change in terms of the medium of storytelling, but that's what it
Yeah,
fundamentally at its heart is. It's about
mhm,
um, trying to connect with people and tell
yeah,
their story, and by
yeah.
doing so, tell a wider truth about humanity, I guess.
Hmm. The power of photography. I think the power of photography will or should always be there in different ways. Whether
Mm,
whether it's truth or not, it's still going to have a power to it,
mm,
and I think that says a lot about the medium itself. I think since the invention of photography, it's only it's only been around, what, 200 years, or not even. I mean, I when did Fox Talbot invent the camera? I don't know. It's like it's relatively new. So we're still kind of
mm,
in this sort of fairly, new era of photography. And yeah, I think it's in some ways it might outlast everything, which is
mm.
interesting too.
Well, if the right things are going, possibly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, I don't know. Again, it's such, you just don't know where it's gonna go, and it's happening so fast, but, um,
Mm.
I'm certainly, interested in seeing what happens to it, but meanwhile, I'll be in the dark room, and I'll be making silver gelatin prints, so I'll be happy.
Excellent. Well, that brings me on to my final two questions then, which are always your desert island photo book and your desert island camera, because I have a
Oh,
suspicion.
yeah.
I have to say that the desert island has a lab, so
I was gonna
you
ask
can
you about
develop
that.
your pictures
So
on the
there's a
island.
lab, there's film, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
dark
there's
room.
all of that.
Okay.
Okay,
Alright.
so you've got to
Alright.
choose. Do you want to do your book or your camera
I'll do
first?
the camera.
Okay,
Leica MP.
nice.
My
No
Leica.
batteries.
No batteries, completely mechanical, made of brass, absolutely phenomenal 35 mil film camera. That would just be that's it. That's all I would need with a 35 mil lens. 1.4 will do.
Summicron or Summilux? Okay,
Well,
good. Summilux. Okay.
I'd probably go if I could. If I had my choice, I shoot with a Sumilux. I shoot with a 1.4, and I'm quite happy with that.
Mm,
It's an older lens. Um, it's a spherical, so it's not that old, but
yeah.
it's not like one of these new Apo lenses which are like super sharp. No, I'd probably stick to that.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful lens.
What kind of era would that be in the Summilux? Is that kind of early 2000s or is that a bit old?
Yeah, it would have been around the 2000s, I reckon. Yep. Same with the camera body. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah.
And what
Okay.
are we up to the book now?
Um, yeah. What's with the book?
So it's a photography book, right? Not a reading book?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it can be a reading book, but it has to be, if it is a reading book, it's going to be on the subject of photography or by a photographer or about a photographer. So
Oh,
it has
okay.
to be photography related. You can't tell me you're going to take the complete works of Shakespeare, for example.
Hmm. Thing is, though, there's some great books that I've read by
Mm,
photographers or on photographers, but you kind of read them once and, whereas a really good photo book is something you'd wanna look at over and over again.
well,
Look, it's
goes
easy
back to
for
the power of
me.
photography, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's easy actually for me. It's Kudelka's Exiles. That's
Excellent choice.
my favorite photo book of all time, and it's, one of my favorite photographers, and I think that that particular book is just not only was it groundbreaking in its time, it's fucking groundbreaking right now. Like, it's never lost its edge. It's just
Mm,
gotten better with time. I don't know how that guy does it, but he was pretty special, Joseph. Very special
mm,
photographer. Still is, and, I've never met him. I'd love to meet him. Uh,
yeah. Yeah. He's a real
but yeah,
character.
Exiles. Do
He's
you like
somebody I'd like to read a
Exiles?
book on.
Do you like the book?
Yeah. I mean, I love Kudelka's work.
Yeah, yeah.
I've only ever flicked through it. I don't own a copy. But
Oh, man, you gotta get a
yeah, I mean,
copy.
it's one of
It's
those ones I would
incredible.
love to get hold of.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will try and endeavor to add it to my collection. So, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to find out more about you, where's the best place for them to find you online?
Well, my website, which is just stephendupont.com, and Instagram is Stephen M for Michael Dupont, is my handle. That's really the only two really, places that I show work.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. And I wait with bated breath for the NAM book.
Me too. Thank you.